that bird's
far, far from the future. That's why he was such a big stop the steal guy up until about a week ago. It really took, for Bert, it was McConnell saying that the election was over. And he'll be the first to tell you that.
He'll be the first to tell you
that.
That's for certain.
Welcome back to and another thing, your favorite news and politics podcast. Back. Oh, happy new beers, happy new years to all of the listeners out there. Did you hear my last one? Did you catch that?
I did.
Yeah, good one, right? Nude years.
Happy New Year! It's been a great year so far. Just everything has been going well.
It has been. I've been enjoying 2021. I'm not doing 2021. Can you believe this material? Because I kind of find that material annoying. I want to hop on here now and say if I see one more tweet about how 2021 off to a great start, I find that it takes away from the real problem. Because the reason people are tweeting that is because they are responding to what happened over the week, which was the violent coup, the insurrection, whatever you want to call it.
And I don't think that makes the whole year a wash either. I was also making
I know
for
you
the
were.
record.
I know you were. I'm just saying. Because I know that's going to be the chorus all year long anytime something goes wrong. But there is clearly an issue at the core of the American principle right now, at the idea of America. Of all of our founding principles, there is clearly some kind of rot or some kind of group of people causing a rot that is being allowed to be magnified and made louder by places like Facebook, Parler, 4chan, Reddit, places where conspiracy theories and QAnon are allowed to just kind of thrive and go relatively unchecked. What?
I don't understand Parler. Who was that created by?
I don't know. I don't know who created Parler. I don't care who created Parler. I just know it's where all the
Is there a way that could get
people
shut
go.
down? Like,
I don't know. That's just where all the alt-right people go. I mean, the government would have to shut it down, but the government doesn't shut down websites because the government doesn't have the right or ability to shut down.
I didn't know if it was like created by somebody who used to run a different website.
No, I don't. It very well may have been, but I don't know anything about.
I guess
Parler.
it's different than Facebook because this is like a website created for conspiracy theorists and not like a website that was infiltrated by conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, no, it's that. That's the product of everything that's been going on. That's the product of people being scared of being canceled because they say crazy things on more popular websites. So they think if they go into the shadows where they can say whatever they want again, it won't be seen. But it's still Al Gore's internet, and we still see everything. So
Al Gore's internet.
You can go where you want, but Parler's still on Al Gore's internet, so we're still going to see it. We're still going to know about it. No, but there's clearly definitely a real problem at the heart of the system right now and at what makes it work, and that is having citizens truthfully informed, rightly informed, and informed in good faith on the things that are going on around them. I think we've seen this week, I don't know if you saw the videos, obviously I'm sure we all have, at the front lines of the first video I saw was a man in a black t-shirt with a gray hooded sweatshirt underneath, a nice pair of track pants, probably a pair of boots, an outfit. Yeah, hell yeah, I'd wear that outfit. Good outfit. But you may have noticed that this man yelling at a Capitol Police officer, I'm sure after spending the summer screaming that blue lives matter at black people, you'll notice on his t-shirt there is a massive Q with the golden letter Q with the American flag on it around or in the letter or whatever. These people aren't your normal American citizen. These are people that you see online. These are people that you know. Likely you have at least one family member, maybe two family members who subscribe to some Q Facebook page, some Q organized meme account, and you see them repost it, and maybe you don't call them out on it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. I don't know. But there is a whole section of people that tend to be some of the loudest and most active participants in what was formerly a fine enough functioning democracy, who are now being amplified and crazier than ever by these conspiracy theories that they keep seeing grow in popularity online. there's a ton of people out there that truly believe that Donald Trump was sent by God or by some light force out there to take down a pedophile ring within the United States government. That it has been his sole life's mission to become the president so he can do this. And that JFK Jr. is going to rise from the dead after his plane crash during the 90s to become the vice president and to replace Mike Pence as vice president. And these were just the theories leading up to the election as to how Trump was going to find a way to win this election despite everything. And despite still having a chance, even without the crazy conspiracy theories. And they're just going to get worse. I want to lead off by saying that we have not seen the end of QAnon. We have not seen the end of the conspiracy theorists. We have not seen the end of people like this trying things like this, just because even though the Senate reconvened just hours after, again, a violent insurrection that had literal homegrown terrorists inspired by the sitting president of the United States, fueled on by two senators acting in completely bad faith for self-serving reasons. That goes for literal walking bag of shit and hemoglobin Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, who you could put him next to any bank teller or other Republican senator and get them all confused at the same time. Nevertheless, though, without those two, without the president, and without a Republican Party that spent the past 4 years rushing to the right, select members finding their way out of the woods to a more moderate version of just less crazy. Shout out to Mitt Romney. Shout out to Ben Sass. Shout out to, I don't know. I can't remember. Mike Lee was pretty good the other night. But we've seen a lot of voices that were surrounding Trump, helping Trump, save Trump's ass, literally a year ago during impeachment. You're seeing a lot of them now start to finally turn their course and change their rhetoric around what the past 4 years has been. It's important that we can't let them do that. Though it is good to give them credit, it is good to accept that Mitt Romney, though he's been, a bad faith Republican for the past career of his, that I don't know. Maybe he hasn't always been the worst of them all, and he probably had the best and the truest thing to say after the Senate reconvened, again, after it was invaded by terrorists, and pretty easily. We'll talk about that a little bit, too. Saying that the Senate owe it essentially to the American people to stop lying to us and stop lying to these fucking weirdos. I'm just going to call them what they are, these fucking weirdos who have been allowed to just spew conspiracy theories and send these conspiracy theories far and wide thanks to places like Facebook again, and have them rebroadcast on Fox News and talked about on Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin's Sirius show. That because of these weirdos, we don't live in the America that we lived in even 2 years ago, but even 72 hours ago. We've come to the crescendo of what America was before, and we are in a whole new place now, I guess you could say, and it could be a place for the better, because there was the excitement of the week. We can't remember that literally like 5 hours before, again, possibly armed terrorists took over the United States Capitol, forcing public servants to go into hiding and wearing makeshift fucking anthrax suits, if you will. I don't know what to call them. What do you call those suits? Hazmat suits. Yeah, those gas masks. Like 5 hours before that, we were celebrating a Democratic win, one of the hardest fought Democratic.
Was called in the middle of it.
Yeah, at like 3:30, in the middle of all of it, it was official that Democrats would take control of the Senate. So it should have been a great day. It should have been a fun day, but what we've seen is that because of these lunatics who have had and just fucking weirdos who have had their crazy fucking ideas magnified online, given a huge platform online, and picked up and regurgitated by Fox News to make them mainstream whenever they should remain in the fringes and darknesses of the web, of Al Gore's internet. We'll go back to it. Because those have been allowed to manifest and become, honestly, part of public policy at times and part of the president's, current sitting president, soon-to-be ex-president's, every waking fucking thought, our entire country democracy was literally at risk on Wednesday, or Tuesday, or on Wednesday afternoon. I think what gets lost in a lot of this and lost in a lot of the discourse and a lot of the talk online is just how close we were to having an actual overthrow of our government. An actual situation where, I mean, you saw the pictures. There's people inside of the Senate, inside of the House of Representatives, with fucking riot cuffs, like what cops carry around at protests for any other event, to arrest people, to take them hostage, to take them and court them off to jail and whatever, those fucking zip tie things. Handfuls of them, going to look for people to hold hostage, Senate members, House members, so that they could change the will of the American people and overthrow what was a free and fair election, what has been a free and fair election, and what is the true will of the American people. Because it wasn't what this possibly group of no more than 3,000 people for the whole entire day wanted. And it's dangerous because that is true minority mob rule. And that is what Republicans like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Donald Trump and the Trump clan and what Mitch McConnell and what all of them have insulated and allowed to go on for 4 years and fed into for the past decade and a half. And yeah, both sides aren't blameless in this. It's not like Democrats have been the party of acceptance and saying, no, these people aren't idiots. Where I'm sitting here calling these people fucking weirdos, but that's okay. I think, I don't know. Just a weird time, I guess. But what is really scary is that these people have been allowed to enforce real mob rule and for about 4 hours nearly ran the country. And there's a lot that could be said about Capitol Police not being prepared enough, about the job the president played, the role the Pentagon played in a faster response after the fact not happening. I think it took like 5 hours for the National Guard to get sent in, and I know that there was resistance from Trump to send the National Guard in, and the Pentagon refused to send in additional resources for the first like hour and a half. Yeah, if it weren't for Mike Pence, the National Guard would have never been sent in, and who knows what would have happened. Well, we know what would have happened. We know what would have happened.
Like, the fact that Pence was able to make that call, which is supposed to only be a call made by the president, right?
I don't know. I don't know about all that, but maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It might be something that only the president can do, but I'm sure in a situation like this where the president is like kind of giddy about it happening, I'm sure the vice president gets to take some role of power in that. So where are we at with everything then? So now where are we? Again, we had on Wednesday. Okay, so maybe we should do a timeline here of what happened Wednesday, just real quick. For those of you that don't know, we started Wednesday morning out, knowing that Raphael Warnock had beaten Kelly Loeffler in Georgia. Yeah. 1 out of 2 ain't bad. Very exciting.
And Ossoff was still leading.
And Ossoff was still leading and leaning in Purdue, and they hadn't called it yet. And we can have a discussion on how networks and decision desks and how Dave Wasserman had more stones than half of the fucking news networks over the course of an evening to call an election. Because I do believe it's important for news networks to say, hey, this thing is over whenever it's clearly over. I know there's also the danger of it having to be reversed. But in a situation that was so clearly painted, the majority of the votes still coming from Democratic-leaning areas, turnout being at levels that even surpassed the presidential election in November. The writing was on the wall since about 8 p.m. that night, which was the Tuesday before everything, which was a welcome surprise by us. I was fully expected to spend the entire evening watching democracy crumble and watch whatever happened, and this was on Tuesday evening. I wasn't expecting it to happen on Wednesday afternoon. But on Tuesday evening, I was fully expecting it to just be an absolute shit show on Twitter and on the internet, and everybody be hot taking about how this is the end of it. We're never going to recover. Democracy has fallen. It will never get up.
I thought they were going to get 1 out of 2. I didn't think John Ossoff was going to take it. I thought Warnock was going to take it, but...
Maybe you shouldn't underestimate that guy at the end of the bar who looks like he just got out of a weird concert for a band you've never heard of.
Well, the thing was, and they were talking about this all night, about how Raphael Warnock was running against Kelly Loeffler, who isn't even originally from Georgia, which they said, you don't have to be from the state to win.
Absolutely not.
But it's
New Yorkers.
Okay. But it's certainly helpful, whereas, David Perdue is somebody who's a big name in Georgia, and his cousin was the governor for a while, so he had all this name recognition. It's a lot. We saw a case with that in Michigan in the House races too. I forget who was running, but they were running against somebody who whose cousin or relative had been the governor before. And when you have that sort of name recognition in a state, it can be harder to beat them. So that was the reason why I was concerned about John Ossoff not winning. But, we saw the organizing in Georgia, and everything was clearly enough to still do that.
And he did always run. He ran behind Warnock in the presidential election cycle, and he ran behind him in this cycle, too, still.
But I think they both were really smart, and if we can just take a second to talk about how their campaign did really well, and obviously a lot of it goes to Stacey Abrams and people organizing on the ground with voting in Georgia. But something they pointed out on MSNBC was that Ossoff and Warnock ran this campaign together. Even though they were running for 2 different seats, they always were a united front and talking about each other and how they both needed to be there. And I think that was a really strong way to run, because when one of them was doing well and picking up votes, the other one kind of got to get some of that too.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It was an overall great win for the Democratic Party, because as we were just listening to the Pod Save guys say, not like they ran as Democratic Socialists or anything.
Yeah.
But they didn't run as a Biden-esque candidate. They did run on, more populist views, taxing the rich more. They didn't go to Medicare for all, but they did talk about expanding Medicaid, which is something that they can do. Things that they went and they talked about, things that are absolutely doable Democratic Party principles that don't go to the place where people call them extreme and make them impossible to even have a discussion about. They stayed right in the sweet spot of Dem policy and showed that if you can find a way to straddle that line between progressive and moderate and do it in an effective way, you can be a candidate that maybe you don't sway Republican voters, but maybe you inspire new Democrat voters to come out, and maybe you bring out people that people that didn't even want to vote in the November election, given everything that was going on, came out and voted in this Georgia Senate runoff election because they knew what was on the line. They knew that if these 2 people won, they were going to get $2,000 checks. They knew that there was going to be some good in it for them. They knew that there was going to be 2 people governing for their state that actually cared about what the people in their state needed, had listened to the problems in their communities, and are going to work to fix them, and shown that they can do it and have. Ossoff might not have the record of being a public figure that Warnock has. Warnock was head pastor at Martin Luther King's church, which is pretty fucking sweet. Talk about the dream gig for a pastor, right?
Ossoff also worked for John Lewis, though. Which
That's true. That's true. And John Ossoff, again, just literally my favorite regular looking dude. John Ossoff looks like a guy, he might be in the Senate chamber right now, but in 20 minutes, the Nationals playing down at wherever the fucking stadium in D.C. is called, and he's got to get there quick, He looks like that kind of dude, and I appreciate that, because there's not enough of that in politics,
Wants more regular-looking white men in politics.
I want regular-looking white men in politics. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it is cool that a 33-year-old Jewish guy is going to be a senator, Gives 30-year-old Gentiles a little... Anyway, where are we at now on this? So, we knew Warnock had his election won. The needle was pointing in the right direction all evening long. Was I high on the needle? You betcha. Strung out on the needle on Tuesday night. So I go in to work on Wednesday, and I'm giddy with excitement. We're talking checks, we're talking healthcare, we're talking Medicaid expansion, all the things that the people truly want to hear about when they go to work. And like at about 1:30, I mean, the weirdos had been convened for a good period of time, and the weirdos had been talking online about how they were going to show up in D.C. and be weirdos, but be violent about it. I mean, Christ, Trump tweeted about it, I think, like a week and a half ago, January 6th, be there, it's going to be crazy, or some shit like that. So they're having their rally. Rudy gives his speech, King of the Weirdos, or I guess Lieutenant King of the Weirdos. America's Weirdo. Yeah, thank you. America's Weirdo. Goes and gives his speech, as he tends to unite after tragedy. His plan this time was to cause the tragedy, apparently. So he got the good crowd riled up. Kind of the opening act, and then Trump came out. And I was watching, I want you guys to know something about the way that I watch videos online. I turn on subtitles, and I don't listen with the volume on. Especially with this, I haven't listened to a word of any of what the speakers at these weirdo rallies have had to say, because one, I don't care, two, I know their lies, and I think it's better in plain text. But there was a moment in Trump's speech where he said that he was going to go with them to the Capitol, showing that he knew that the plan was for these people to go and rush the Capitol. He said he was going to go with them. And literally about 20 minutes later, you had people breaking down police barricades, punching, running over police officers, getting into full-on fights and scuffles with the blue lives that matter so much to them, and bombarding the Capitol and causing having a literal armed insurrection within the country, a literal civil war happening in Washington, D.C. And it's exactly what the white nationalists wanted. It is exactly what the Republicans, your Republicans like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley wanted, which is their chance to rush as far to the right as possible because they know, hell, I'll get these people and maybe the Republicans that go along with them. And that was it. And before you know it, 2 o'clock's happening. We have the Senate on lockdown. We have the Senate evacuated, the House of Representatives evacuated. You find pipe bombs in D.C. at the RNC, at the Capitol, at the DNC. There's literal pipe bombs being put throughout the city, or at least 2 or 3 of them, by, again, these... What did Trump call them?
Special people.
These special people. They truly are special people, I will say, if we want to use the demeaning word. If we want to say special in the demeaning sense, the way my grandma says it sometimes. She doesn't mean it that way, but that's just...
that's ableist. You shouldn't say that.
Oh. My joke is ableist? Or my grandma saying
Your
it's
grandma's
ableist?
joke is ableist.
Well, it's not my grandma's joke, that's just how my grandma says it.
Okay.
It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right, but...
Special if it means in the sense of, like, they are not like everybody else. Sure.
Sure. Yes, in the sense that they are...
in the sense that they are not representative of everybody.
Fucking weirdos. Special in the sense that they are the weirdos of society. Now I'm sidetracked.
I don't know. It almost feels to me, it almost feels like not enough to call them weirdos, It almost makes them seem like, just some weird guys when, like, they're anarchists, they're extremists.
Oh, no, I know.
Insurrectionists.
They're insurrectionists, but they're fucking
Literal
weirdos.
monsters.
The reason I'm calling them weirdos is because they're weirdos until you light the fuse, and then once you light the fuse, the weirdos become insurrectionists.
Yeah.
So, like, what we had was just a bunch of fucking weirdos being talked to by a bunch of fucking weirdos, but then King Weirdo showed up and said, hey, let's go to the Capitol, I'll fucking come with you. And then the weirdos are ready to go. And then you had...
Fuel to their fire.
Yeah, and then you had Howley and Cruz egging him on all day. I mean, Josh Hawley gave him the fucking fist of support on his way in to go challenge the election results. Something he's not supposed to be doing during the session anyway. That's the reason I'm only calling them weirdos, because I do think that these are people that wouldn't have been insurrectionists had they not been made violent by propaganda.
Well,
by propaganda
and
this
with white
shit.
nationalists all the time, is that they have these ideas in their head, and many of them go their whole lives never doing anything destructive, being shitty racist people, but never doing anything destructive, and then
just driving their trucks too fast in town, yelling the N-word.
Exactly.
You know?
But then you have somebody come into power who gives them a voice and makes them feel like they have the power to actually do something.
And then the fuse is lit.
And then literally tells them to go do something. I mean, I shouldn't even say, like, empowering them through speech. Like, no, he literally told them to storm the Capitol. So, of course this was going to happen.
Yeah, no, we knew this was going. I mean, as someone said, it's been steadily. This has been, what was it?
Steadily increase. Somebody had a great tweet that said, this escalated steadily over the last 4 years, because
and it has.
This was not a shock, you know? And I feel like the journalism around this was kind of shitty, because people were like, well, how did we know this was going to happen? How could we have prepared for this when the people at the Capitol are literally wearing shirts that say January 6th on it, Civil War? Like, when there's stuff online, when you literally have the Trump tweet from December 30th saying, like, we're going to storm the Capitol on January 6th, and there are journalists like, well, nobody could have prepared for this.
How could
we
know?
What?
I don't know. I think it just shows that there's a lot of journalists that don't hang out on Twitter all day, and maybe that's for the best. I don't know, but we knew it was coming, and that's what makes what we're going to talk about now so surprising. It is that whenever you see these videos, whenever you watch the videos coming out from the violent coup attempt created, led, and raged by President Trump and his supporters on Wednesday, you see the one that was the most telling to me, and I don't want to give... You guys know I ain't no fan of cops. You guys know that this and another thing is not aligned with any police affiliates or precincts or anything. We don't stand the police. In fact, we would like to see less of them have less funding. It just we don't like them. You know, shout out to not liking the cops. That being said, though, you do see, and they are going to investigate this, you'll see that there are barricades that can't be more than a football field away, more than 100 yards away from the Capitol, you know? Just a gross underestimation of the violence stewing inside these people. Just a gross underestimation of what these people came there to do, at the forefront of it. Gross irregularity in the way that this event was policed to the way Black Lives Matters events were policed over the summer. I mean, I don't need to talk about it because, I mean, during one event, the president literally sent the National Guard in to bomb protesters so he could go take a photo in front of a church with an upside-down Bible. During one of the events, the people who broke into the Capitol in an attempt to literally overthrow the government and take hostage, kill, capture, and maim the leaders of our country, trying to uphold the most democratic process we have, which is our free and fair election. The way those people were literally walked down the steps afterward. So there is obviously the gross irregularity in the way that these events were policed. But even just the preparation for the event, you could tell, was not efficient. There's a video out there where a bunch of these MAGA chuds, a bunch of these fucking weirdos, who again have been instigated by the president literally less than an hour before via a speech to them, go running up to this set of barricades that are, again, not far enough from the Capitol for anyone to hope inside to feel safe, I will say. We're talking, you can see the steps of the Capitol in this shot. It's no more than a football field away, maybe even less than that. And you have 20, 25 people rushing into this barricade, pushing this barricade into these two cops that are literally doing everything they can to fight off one couer, one insurrectionist, one weirdo, one fucking traitor to our society, to our country, to our nation, at a time, while another one comes at them from the other side. Like, you can see that these dudes are being actually attacked in a way they were not being attacked at a Black Lives Matter rally, at Black Lives Matter protests. And I think that's important to discern here, because there's been a lot of questions online as to why didn't they shoot these people. And I, too, have those questions as to why these people storming the Capitol were not brutalized the way Black Lives Matter protesters were. I think that all these people should have also, if Black Lives Matter protesters got beaten to a pulp, these people should have gotten beaten to a pulp and then some.
Do we really not know why?
Well, we know why. We know why it didn't happen. I'm not saying that. But there is also the fact that these were clearly not protesters.
Yeah.
These were people coming there to have a war. These are people who brought bombs, who without a doubt had guns on them. We have to remember the difference between a Black Lives Matter protest and this fucking thing was the Black Lives Matter protest didn't have guns at it, I reckon.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I reckon, was probably armed to the fucking teeth. So why would you want to start having a literal war whenever you have 20 cops up against 20 people with guns? 200 people with guns versus the side with 20 guns. 200 guns is going to win, and you have a literal war happening.
Well, the other thing is they didn't prepare for it. They
And
knew
they didn't.
this was happening, and they, like, people talk about they didn't have enough cops to handle
plays
it. Why
into
didn't
it.
you have enough
and that
people
plays
to handle
into
it?
And I think that's the underestimation and
Yeah.
the inequality in the system is that they thought, oh, these are just whites, we'll be fine. But what they forgot is that these are the violent people of society. This is where the violence stems from. These are the people who want the violence, who like to see the violence against black and brown people. They root it on when it's happening to them. But then once the fist is turned, if you will, once the billy club is turned on them, it's a different story.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. That's when it becomes "fuck the blue" being chanted inside the halls of the U.S. Senate. And I think that is worth noting that this was never a protest. This was always an attempted coup. This was always an attempt to start a war within the United States of America by U.S. citizens against U.S. citizens. And that is another thing that makes it a lot different than a Black Lives Matter protest. But makes it even more astonishing that it wasn't treated the same way as, or with an even further heightened response. There, again, I'm talking 2 to 3 cops on one barricade while 20 people are screaming, yelling, trying to pull them down, tackle them, throw fists at them, threaten their lives, everything. Like, this was real danger. These cops are in real danger in these videos. These are violent folks. These are truly, truly violent people, and I hope that maybe the people watching at home that were formerly Blue Lives Matter people are saying, oh, this is the people we were aligning with. This is what they really meant. And see that. There should have been walls of people, because then we're watching MSNBC on Wednesday night, and they're showing the police lines. They had a fence of all kinds of different police officers across the Capitol lawn, about 200 yards away from the Capitol at this point, pushing people back as the woman on MSNBC was reporting, every 90 seconds they would push the line further back and push the insurrectionists further back and away from the Capitol. Why weren't they doing that all day? Why weren't they containing these people to a small freedom area or a freedom of speech fence all day long? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I know they're going to investigate it, and I'm sure at the end of the investigation they will see that there was some knowing negligence, and that there was some people who probably knew what was coming within the Capitol Guard, within the Capitol Police, within the DC Police, within the Pentagon, within the White House, obviously, who kept this from being quelled whenever it should have been quelled from the onstart. We shouldn't have gotten to a point where we had to evacuate our Senate and stop the certification of Joe Biden's election. We shouldn't have gotten to that point. But we did, and we also got to the point where there were bombs in D.C., and I think it's time for a lot of people, and I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this to exclude Democrats from this or anything, but I think it's time for the Republican Party to take a long fucking look at itself. I think it's time for Mitch McConnell. I think it's time for Joni Ernst. I think it's time for Mike Lee. I think it's time for Mitt Romney. I think it's time for Susan Collins. I think it's time for Lisa Murkowski. I think it's time for Lindsey Graham. I think it's time for all of them to stop and take a look at that Lankford, who spoke and had planned on challenging the election results from Oklahoma, talked like an actual cowboy. I was charmed. I was charmed. I think it's time for them all to look at themselves and say, okay, this is the party we created. This is the party that we allowed to bubble up under the surface and be lit by a literal madman within hours. And this is what we are going to have to deal with and overcome over the next... I mean, this could optimistically be a 2-year problem. This could optimistically be a 4-year problem. But this could also be, should the Republican Party not respond resoundingly and against what we saw on Wednesday, which again was a violent coup attempt against the United States of America, led by sitting U.S. president and his supporters, need to look and say, okay, this is what we created. This is what we've caused over our past decade of cynicism toward our institutions. There has been a decade-long, even longer than a decade, fight against our institutional government, against our democratic institutions by the Republican Party. Be it going back to during the Clinton days with Newt Gingrich in the House, working to undermine the way the House works, House rules. He took the House of Representatives and turned it into a kangaroo court for 4 years, and then allowed it to pretty much be that. I shouldn't call it a kangaroo court, because that's not what it turned into or anything. But he changed the way the House worked for the worse. He changed the way that the Republican Party talked about. I can't think about the right term for it. He changed the way that people look at government assistance programs for the worst, and turned the Republican Party into a cynical weapon against the poor and people who need the help of the U.S. government. And ever since that day, ever since the day Newt Gingrich did that back in, I think, 1992, maybe? I think it was before the Clinton election. I believe it was during the Bush years. The first Bush years, if I'm remembering correctly. I wasn't around. I read a book. I read a book. I wasn't around for it. But since that day that Newt Gingrich was able to weaponize the Republican Party against poor people and instill this cynicism in them, this has grown under the surface. This has become the racism and cynicism and xenophobia and just hatred of other people's ideas has been festering inside the Republican Party to the point where it created these people. And these people have been allowed to happen and have been created. And it's time for the party to look and say, okay, we did do this. There is no doubt in our minds that our cynicism, our hatred of poor and people don't think like us, who don't act like us and think like us, and bringing that into the halls of the Senate, brought this into the halls of the Senate. And it's time for us to change that. Will that happen? Probably not. Ideally, they would, but it's more likely that we just see a more toned-down version of what we've been seeing now. It's more likely that we go back to what was happening in the 90s, where it's just more thickly veiled racism and more thickly veiled hatred of our institutions than what we've seen over the past 4 years and in a macro dose over the past 2 weeks. And enough can't be said about how fucking awful people like Ted Cruz are. It was really great that for an hour on Wednesday night, hour and a half, that we got to watch at least before we went to bed while they were talking on the Senate floor. Though I didn't really sleep. I was up checking it on Twitter and stuff anyway. We weren't watching it anymore. But there was a good hour and a half there where everybody was just calling out the senator from Texas, to tell him what a shitbag he was. And doing it in more poetic words, obviously, and in more more educated speak, if you will. But it was nice to have that hour where everybody in the Senate was literally just shitting on Ted Cruz, calling him a piece of shit. And that is, I want to make clear on this podcast that Ted Cruz is literal garbage. Ted Cruz has been literal garbage for the past 4 years. Ted Cruz is a smart man. Ted Cruz knows the Constitution in and out, and he knows how to manipulate it in the worst ways possible, and he has made a political career out of it. He has made a political career out of knowing the U.S. Constitution and knowing the ways that he can use it to limit the voice and power of people that disagree with him. He has learned over the past 4 years that there is a way for him to do it in the same way Trump did it, but in a much smarter way, that someone who, again, has been educated to know constitutional law, in legal theory, in actual originalist think and originalist speak, and knows how to actually be a part of an institution that he's trying to tear down from within. Ted Cruz is that person. Ted Cruz, we've been watching a lot of the Batman movies. Ted Cruz is the bane of the Senate because he was born in darkness, and all he wants is to bring that darkness to the people of Gotham, and that is us in this situation.
Was he born in darkness?
No, but he's a piece of shit, and I don't like him.
I feel like you could compare him more to, what's his name's character? Christopher Walken's character.
Oh, you think he's Christopher Walken's character? Shrek?
I don't know.
You think he's a Shrek type?
No, I guess not so much. That's more of like a Bezos thing.
Yeah, that's that straight up Jeff Bezos character. Christopher Walken straight up played Jeff Bezos in that Batman movie. Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like he's not.
I want to bring an Amazon facility to Astoria so we can bring jobs to the people. No, but if I had to, I would say if there was a Batman villain to associate Ted Cruz with, it would be Bane, because his whole goal is to show the worst sides of people to each other, and get them to fight it out in a fraudulent court in a phony system that is set up to benefit him. Which is literally that one scene in the Batman movie where they have the court with the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow's overseeing it, and you can choose exile or death by exile, essentially. That's Ted Cruz's ideal. That's his ideal world. And then you have people like Josh Hawley, who I think Claire McCaskill, and I don't usually give the people on MSNBC a lot of credit, except for Brian Williams, a ton of credit, but Claire McCaskill said something really smart about, and really true about Josh Hawley. He's just a overly ambitious guy that just wants to be president. Think of him as evil Pete Buttigieg. Yeah, if Pete Buttigieg wanted to enslave people in mass, that's what Josh Hawley is. And it's fair to say that, because Josh Hawley's, again, the one who lit this. He's the one who he's the senator who started out. He was the first senator to say that he would hear a state's objections and air a state's objection in the Senate on January 6th during the certification process. He even beat the shitbag Ted Cruz to that. Ted Cruz was happy to fight this in front of the Supreme Court, and that's the true difference between these two people. Is Hawley wanted to do this behind closed doors in a session that normally wouldn't have been seen on television, and was only seen on television because there was literally a civil war happening in the halls of our Senate during the day, caused by him and Ted Cruz. Whereas Ted Cruz couldn't fucking wait for there to be a 24-hour news cycle with him in front of the Supreme Court arguing to throw out the votes of people in Pennsylvania and Michigan. He couldn't wait to be the face of that and be the Mr. Smith goes to Washington of voter disenfranchisement. Whereas Hawley wanted to do it behind closed doors and do it as an educated theorist. So that way he could, it's all about being president for those two guys. And I think it was more so about becoming president for Josh Hawley, and more so about whatever the fuck Ted Cruz wants to do. I feel like Ted Cruz just wants to consolidate power and be the last standing Republican. Like, if he had the chance, he would just walk through the Senate stabbing other Republicans until he's the last one standing. And that's my opinion on that. So where are we now? Obviously, we have a rogue president. We have a president who has been part of launching an insurrection against the United States. A president who gave a speech 20 minutes before this happening saying he was going to follow these violent people to the Capitol. and take part in the insurrection with them. And guess what? He's off Twitter. He's not allowed on Facebook, but he still has the codes. Which is interesting to think, even though Speaker Nancy Pelosi, this is from the Washington Post, not too long ago, reported this, that she sent a letter Friday to the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mark A. Miley, about keeping an unstable president from accessing nuclear codes. And there have already been people within the chiefs of staff and within the military and within military leadership who have said that they will not take orders from Trump over the next 2 weeks up to January 20th when his term officially expires. So there is that safeguard, but Nancy Pelosi, I guess, just figured she'd make it official by sending a letter. And I'm sure that, you got to figure there. We figured a lot already this week that's been proven wrong. Like, we figured that the Senate and the House of Representatives in a post-9/11 world would be pretty impossible to take down. We were wrong. I don't want to talk about the looting. I know I'll get pissed off more than I need to if we talk about the looting. And about the people, putting their feet up on all the marble and that.
You talk about how the FBI put out that if you have any information, send it to them. Although somebody pointed out what was not funny, but sad, is that the FBI is, putting out tweets being like, if you can help us identify any of these people, send that information our way. And somebody pointed out that they remember during the Black Lives Matter protest where the FBI literally figured out who somebody was by locating the Etsy shop.
They bought something from. That's right. I forgot all about that.
They were more than willing to go above and beyond for Black Lives Matter protesters who didn't do anything wrong. But for these literal insurrectionists, they're like, if you guys could just, help us out. It's it's your job. Figure it out. You were there. Ugh.
Well, they are going to start rounding these people up. The even funnier thing about it all is that these people committed a federal crime on federal grounds, violent federal crimes, federal crimes, crimes in general, some light treason, that's for sure, stealing government documents, real crimes committed, and they did so at a time when they could have been wearing masks. But none of them did.
About it. There's that one guy. I saw one example last night of a guy bragging about how proud he was of his son.
Oh my god!
For going in
Why is the FBI calling me?
And then the guy that took a picture of himself holding a piece of Nancy Pelosi's mail, and it was okay, you literally just admitted to a federal crime.
Yeah, no, it's just like I said, just weirdos. Again, these are just fucking weirdos. These are just weird dudes, weird people. These are just the weirdos of society who have been. No, because even stupid people are good.
Stupid people can be good.
And weirdos can be good, too.
There's nothing more dangerous than a stupid weirdo.
There's nothing more dangerous than a stupid weirdo who hates everything around him and is scared that his country is being stolen from him and keeps being told that it is.
Nothing more dangerous than a stupid weirdo being led by a stupid
weirdo. Absolutely. But no, there's more here. There's so much going on. So then, obviously, there's the talk of removing the president. Since we can't trust him to have a Twitter or a Facebook or an Instagram account, which is fucking crazy because we even let, I don't know, a lot of people have Instagram accounts.
Let Sean King stay on Instagram.
Let Sean King stay on Instagram now. Anyway, let Jake Paul stay on Instagram. Am I right, kids? Jeeps.
Am I right, kids?
That was for the YouTubers out there who might be listening. That was for you guys. Boy. So now they're talking about removing the president and how they can do that. I don't know all the ways they can do it. I know there's the 25th Amendment. Obviously, the 25th Amendment would be probably the most appropriate way to do this because the 25th Amendment doesn't require Congress to get involved. Why don't we want Congress to get involved? Okay. So ideally, we wouldn't have to go the route of an impeachment because as we saw in the first impeachment, an impeachment can really divide the country. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if dividing the country even further to remove a president who has another week and a half of work is the best thing to do.
Impeachment can also drag out.
And impeachment can also find a way to drag out. It might take forever. And granted, you do have 20 days to do it, so they could impeach the president. Okay, this is where it gets confusing, and I don't know how it would work. No, but that's how long you have, because then there is something in a loose interpretation of the Constitution, parroted by Matt Gaetz during Trump's impeachment.
Rick Gates.
Rick Gaetz. See, I can't do that because Rick Gaetz is a real person, too.
I know, but it's funny to say his name.
It's fun. So Steve Gates, I love Rick. I can't believe that was so funny. There was a time when Trump went down to Florida to help Matt Gaetz get reelected, and he kept calling him Rick Gates. It was too funny. Rick over here is doing a great job. We love what Rick's doing. And then there's Matt Gaetz just smiling like an idiot, knowing that the president doesn't actually know his name, even though he's staked his whole political career on helping the guy do bad. Anyway.
Makes me laugh.
You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. So no, impeachment probably isn't the best thing to do. It's an option, but it's not the option we want because we've seen it can take a while. Oh, but back to that loose interpretation that you can impeach a president after he's been president. So you can. In theory, they were threatening to impeach Barack Obama, which in theory they could have done had Barack Obama done anything actually impeachable. But in this case, they could, because this is actually impeachable, because this was, again, an armed conflict led against the United States by the president. They were not directly led on, but you know what I mean. He called for it. He knew. His words started it. It happened because of him. It happened because of things that he parroted for weeks, lying to people, lying to his supporters, the most violent of them, to get them to come to D.C. He told them to come to D.C., said he was going to go with him to the Capitol. There's enough there. There's enough there to say that he's responsible for this and that it's impeachable. We also know that he tried to get the United States, the state attorney general, or whatever Brad Raffensperger is. And I know that's not his last name, and I know I botched it, but the election official in Georgia that Trump made the phone call to, Secretary of State in Georgia, to get the votes changed. How many? He was looking for 11,780. I'm just looking for 11,780 votes. So that's impeachable. But again, not the route we should go because we know, well, not the preferred route we should go because we have to remove the guy.
We need the most efficient.
We need the most efficient way, the most undivisive way. And I mean, yeah, the Republican Party should they go through with the cabinet, the 25th Amendment removal, yeah, they likely alienate the Trump base. Oh no. How awful would that be for everybody to never have a Trump voter vote again? I'm not one for that kind of talk usually, but man, these people shouldn't be allowed to vote. They shouldn't be allowed to be a part of society. Anyone that was part of this insurrection should be stripped of all of their rights as a U.S. citizen. That includes voter rights. That includes their really just the voter rights. That's all I care about. Maybe owning land, property, owning businesses. Shouldn't be allowed to own businesses. Shouldn't be allowed to own property. Shouldn't be able to buy a gun. Yeah, watch list. Should be on no-fly list. These people should be given the full brown terrorist treatment. They should be given the full, because there's been white terrorists who've been treated well. Kyle Rittenhouse. So you should give them the full any other terrorist treatment to every single one of these people, and that also includes them not getting their $2,000 in a couple weeks here. That should be split up amongst all of us in this house, not the rest of you guys, just for Giovanna and Bert and I here. But again, that would be the ideal way to go about this, would be to do it within the 25th Amendment. And I'm confused now because I know they need 2/3 or half of the cabinet. I think it's 2/3, which means they need 8 cabinet officials. So then my question is, we've had 2 cabinet officials resign in the past 48 hours, Elaine Chao and Betsy DeVos. So my question is now, do they only need 6 people?
Yeah, do they have to replace those people immediately,
or do they only need 6 votes within the cabinet? Which I bet they could find 6.
Yeah.
I bet they could find 6.
Almost makes you kind of wish those people stayed in the cabinet just so they could vote against it and then leave. But
well, because my theory is that they left. I don't know, because why do you leave whenever you know that you could be the vote that gets the guy removed, unless you're scared to be part of that vote? But I think it's pretty obvious that it's the right side to be on, because again, this was only about 3,000 people who showed up to this thing, but there were 7 million people who voted for the guy, so who knows? We'll talk about that when we close off the pod here. What was I just saying, though? Oh, the cabinet thing. So do they only need 6 votes now to remove him? I don't know. But he can't be president anymore, that's for sure. And even if they take most duties away from him and he's just a ceremonial position, it's still something. And I know he said that he's not going to go to the inauguration now, which I don't fucking care about. We knew he wasn't going to. We knew he wasn't going to go.
But they're also still saying January 20th there's going to be another one of these attempts happening. So
I bet January 20th you can't get into D.C.
I hope not.
I bet they'll shut.
I just feel like they told us when we were trying to impeach him last year. They said, why don't you just wait and let the American people decide? Just wait and let the people decide.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we did that and something bad still happened afterwards.
Yeah.
And you should talk about how we've been talking about the lame duck period for
we'll throw that
losing
into.
incumbent
So much to
presidents.
talk about today.
It's been a while. It's okay.
So
A lot has happened.
before we talk about. Okay, yeah, we should talk about the lame duck thing. This has proven that the lame duck period is too long in the case of an incumbent president losing the election. Which doesn't happen often. It's only happened, I think, 3. This is the 3rd time, maybe the 4th time that it's happened. I know we had Carter, Bush, and now this, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's only the 3rd time.
Which shows how rare it is for an incumbent president to lose. But maybe... and since this is the first time it's happened with the internet and in modern times, that maybe we should shorten that lame duck period. And I know there's a lot of work to do when turning over administrations, especially between political parties and ideologies and
Well, the thing is, normally
leadership.
The president is willing to assist in that
Yeah.
transition period. I don't know. That's why it's like, this is not a normal situation.
No, far from a normal situation. I found Bert's pillow. But far from a normal situation. So maybe there's a situation where we change the Constitution to make this lame duck period only like a week for an incumbent president. Maybe keep on, put a provision in there to keep on most of his staff for the first month and a half. Or for the first, get the transition period going and have it be happening actively while the new president governs. Because as we've seen, we can't allow for a man or anybody, man or woman, to hold on to a government that they truly have no control over and spur this on, because this was an absolute fucking mess, and it all could have been avoided if we had just called the election on election day, certified the next day, had everybody meet. You save so much time. Maybe allow a day or 2 after the election for legal challenges, maybe a week for legal challenges. But then after that, the new president takes over. There's no need for a 2.5-month wait. This is the product of that 2.5-month wait. This is a product of 2.5 months of the president literally lying to people, lying to his most fervent and violent supporters to get them to show up and do something like this. And they did it, and it happened. And I think it's proof that we don't need 2.5 months of this going on. And it could happen again. Very likely could happen again. And I think we need to be aware of that reality, that this could and likely will have a chance of happening again, because there's going to be more Trumps. We've seen how easy it is for, again, weirdos to find a weirdo that they think represents them well enough, and here we are. There's something I had to say before we started talking about that. Luckily, there's never dead air on this pond because there's always a ton of street noise. I'm sure we have some truck out there delivering treats to Jay Maharaj. The huh?
Yeah, it's
it's the sanitation, the poop truck. Hell yeah. There's something else I had to throw in today, I'm sure. Oh. What can we look? So I want to close things off here in kind of a positive way, with the excitement that we felt on Monday. Maybe let that come back a little bit, or on Tuesday night, let that come back a little bit, because granted this did happen, but this was just one day. this has been so far really just one really awful day. And I know they say they're going to try to do this again on January 20th. I don't think they'll be able to do this again on January 20th. I'm sure there'll be crazy security precautions increased on January 20th. I'm sure you won't be able to tweet, say the word, write on Facebook, or send in the mail the word January 20th without there being some kind of flag on you for the next probably week and a half. I'm sure that I'm sure there's been a lesson learned here by our military forces and by the government to be better prepared for Inauguration Day, because you're right, it is likely that they try at least. They're at least going to try. I mean, more power to them, I guess, but not really. I mean, the fact that I had the whole line of secession was in those buildings the other day, and we could have to start the close out here. We could be sitting in a situation where the entire line of secession got eliminated in one day.
They tried to bring bombs in.
Yeah, they tried to bring bombs in. This was a literal war against the United States that we all witnessed. We've witnessed the first armed occupancy of the United States Senate since the War of 1812 happened on Tuesday.
It wasn't that against the British.
On Wednesday, and that was British forces. These are our own people. Not even during the Civil War were people from the South, were Confederate forces able to find their way into the halls of the Senate. And we saw it happen on Tuesday. And I think that shows the rot that is within the Republican Party, within a lot of the mindset and a lot of these people. And just the mindset of an American public who has had their brains warped and changed over the past 10 years via Fox News and Facebook, giving them what they want and villainizing the people that they want to villainize, and making it literally ununited country, an ununited States of America, by saying that it's not the United States, it is blue America versus red America. It is we are Republicans and we want liberal tiers. It is that mindset. It is that rhetoric that has caused this. Yeah, though us Democrats can be like really fucking dramatic and kind of over the top and annoying, and we'll whine about whatever we want on Twitter, we're not going to start wearing Joe Biden hats. A good portion of us, we're not going to put a fucking... We don't stand politicians to the dangerous extent that we are seeing these fucking weirdos do, and that's why I'm also using the term weirdos for these people, because only a weirdo would put their entire reputation on the line for one person they've never met before and will never meet. There is if you are a Donald Trump supporter living in my hometown, and I say this wholeheartedly, you put your reputation on the line for a man that doesn't give a shit that you exist, and even if he met you by fucking chance, wouldn't give a shit afterward that you exist. And you put... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you should mention the fact that, remember, they talked about how advisors to the president said that as this whole insurrection was unfolding, Trump was upset at the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, he's not... There was reports that Trump was fuming about what was happening on Tuesday, or on Wednesday, fuming about it. But not because people were attacking the Senate, not because people were attempting to kill his co-workers. It's important to remember that the Senate and the president are fucking co-workers when it comes down to it. That's franken fucking accounting. That's bill over in HR, as far as that goes. But while that was happening, he wasn't concerned about the loss of life. He wasn't concerned that literally 5 people died during this. More deaths than Benghazi, but that's not worth talking about and kind of stupid, only fun to bring up online. While all this was happening, the president was upset because it looked trashy. It was bad for his aesthetic. It wasn't the brand he wanted.
He wanted guys in suits and khaki pants, and instead he got guys in QAnon sweatshirt.
Yeah, wasn't what he wanted. Wasn't what the look he wanted. But it's the look he got, and it's the look he fought for the past 4 years. Past 10 years of his life, really. But there is really exciting things on the horizon for us. We'll get to January 20th. We'll get through January 20th. I hope, as long as we get there. And I'm still pretty sure that we were, because I can't.
Prepared. I think they're better prepared now.
Yeah, they're more prepared now, and I don't think we'll see a violent insurrection happen on January 20th. And if we do, who knows what happens then. But should we get to the place where we have the Democrat trifecta, Democratic president, Democratic House, Democratic Senate, everything we've talked about on this podcast for the past year has a possibility, past year and a half really, has a possibility of happening. Oh, shoot, we're closing in on 2 years here. 2 years of Owen and Other Things.
Oh, yeah.
How interesting. We're close to that now. We had, again, a black pastor and a 33-year-old Jewish kid just won a Senate race in the deepest part of the South, in what had been known as the deepest part of the South, in Georgia, in blood red Georgia. That is no longer a reality for the Republican Party. That is no longer a sure thing. We're seeing real change in localities. We're seeing people learn how to vote for their interests, with their interests, whereas before they'd kind of been voting with what they'd been told their interests were. We're seeing that with more political engagement. We're getting more educated voters. We're getting more people to take part in this process. Like I said earlier in the podcast, Jon Ossoff did not win his first race. We didn't say that explicitly on this podcast, but he did not win his first election. He narrowly got to this runoff, but he barely got to this runoff. But then he ended up winning this election because people cared, and because the campaigns of these two people, Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff, said the right things, had the right message, and talked about things that were affecting people directly, and that was getting these stimulus checks to them, getting Medicaid expansion, fighting for things that will make their dollar go further, getting them more money when they need it now, showing the corruption of the people on the other side. And they did it in a way that got more people to turn out than turned out for the biggest election, what they were calling the biggest election of our lives, the November presidential election. Because of their messaging and the way that they were able to fight and turn out Georgians, we will wake up on January 22nd, 2021, with an entire new outlook in horizon for America. A whole entire new a chance to almost start anew. And granted, it's not with the diehard progressive candidates that we've talked about on this show. It's not going to be led by Bernie. It's not going to be led by Elizabeth. It's not going to be led by, AOC. It's not going to be the squad. It's not going to be anybody, any of that group. But it isn't going to be these fucking cynics anymore. It isn't going to be Mitch McConnell blocking voters' rights legislation. It's not going to be Mitch McConnell blocking a $15 an hour minimum wage. It's not going to be Mitch McConnell blocking all legislation that comes to his desk that doesn't work to benefit him and his party and their hold on power. It's not going to be just confirming judges. It's going to be gun control. There's going to be real chances now over the next 2 years at least for real change to happen and lean toward the democratic norms and principles that we've talked about on this podcast and that have been talked about by pundits and in books and all kinds of different sources for the past 10, 15 years. Things that the Democratic Party has been working toward: cheaper prescriptions, again, more gun control, voters' rights. The tides are turning, and we're seeing it happen, and it's happening because of people in Georgia and people around the country that are like the people in Georgia who fought for what Wednesday afternoon should have been had there not been the violent insurrection against our nation and against our country and our principles. So we are in a much better place. I want to say that. I know we had a really dark podcast. I know nothing we talked about today was necessarily fun or good. In fact, it was all very much horrifying. It was literally the scariest day I've ever lived through, that a lot of us probably will ever live through. There was, again, a chance that our entire government was nearly eliminated within an hour and a half. We could have been ruled by Trumpism. We could have had Donald Trump Jr. as our Secretary of State. We could have had the line of secession totally eliminated, and who knows what happens after that, because we've never had it happen before. Our country would be in ruin right now. Had like a fucking actual foreign actor gotten in there, not just a bunch of weirdos from Indiana who got flown in on a JetBlue flight, or a bunch of idiots who drove in from Ohio, or a bunch of people who took the megabus in from Tennessee. Like, there is a real possibility that our country could be in ruin right now, so we should hold on to that. I know we talked about that a lot today, but there is also the fact that in the deepest part of the South, a black guy and a Jewish kid won an election, and did so with truly populist views, things that are hard to vote against, and hopefully showed the Democratic Party that there is a blueprint to win these areas that typically are not even a contest for Republicans, and that there is a path for us to have this better world and better society that actually works for people. So I want to close on that. We'll be back next week to talk about who knows what. Hopefully not another violent insurrection. Maybe it'll just be about Joe Biden getting the vaccine to everybody. Maybe he just announced right before we started here that he's going to release the beast, so to speak. He's gonna let all remaining coronavirus vaccine doses just kind of be like put out there. Come get them. I'm sure they'll do something a little more organized than that, but he's going to release the doses that are going expired in stockpiles right now. So there is better stuff happening already, and all we got to do is just hope they find a way to remove this president. If they have to impeach him and remove him, I know there are already some Republican senators like Ben Sasse who are saying that they are happy to convict the president this time of impeachment for his crimes. We wish they would have done it before, because we probably could have saved countless American lives to being killed by coronavirus, and also a failed violent coup attempt, and also whatever happens over the next 10 days or so before they remove the president and say he's not president anymore. But we'll be back next week. Thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, you should subscribe if you're not subscribed already. If you haven't told your friends, tell your friends. Share us. Your host, Vince Petrone. Bertram Beans, our producer. Fact checks from Giovanna, per usual. She did a very good job today, everybody. Good job, Giovanna, with the fact checking.
Oh, wow.
Really good job.
Facts.
Very good. Very good. So thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week. Have a good one. Have a good weekend, I guess. Enjoy it out there. Be safe. Don't get killed by insurrectionists. I'm sorry. Have a good one.